Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we are bringing back David Khourshid. How you doing, David?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to have you back on the show. It is always a blast whenever you're around. I'm especially excited for the stack we're going to play with today. It sounds like science fiction, so I'm very excited for that. But before we jump into what that is, let's talk a little bit about you. For folks who haven't seen the show before or aren't familiar with your work, do you want to give us a bit of a background?
Yeah, sure. So I am an ex-Microsoft engineer, I guess you could call that. And now I'm the founder of a company called Stately.ai. And so what we're doing at Stately is I created this library called XState, which allows you
Mm.
to make state machines and state charts and use them on the web, both on the front end. And as we're going to see today, they're also really useful on the server side. So yeah, basically, I turned that into a company where we're just trying to make application logic visual and collaborative to everyone. So, yeah, that's what I've been up to.
That's very and so state machines are one of those things that um I have always been fascinated by state machines ever since I think you were the one who introduced me to them, because they take things that are really hard to explain or things that seem really easy to explain but actually aren't, and make them visual. And for me, I always do a better job of understanding things when I can sort of see a flow chart. I'm always asking somebody, can you show me this, like, how do these steps fit together? And what I love about state machines is that that's a process that I would have traditionally done on a whiteboard. I'd start drawing boxes and arrows and kind of labeling everything out. And you always miss a step. You always forget something. You jump over. You're like, oh yeah, well after then they log in, and you just skip all the steps in the middle where somebody has to log in and all the different failure states or invalid states or those sorts of things. And then you approve the scope. You're like, oh yeah, this is going to be no problem at all. Start building the thing. Go, oh my god, we skipped so many steps. Right? And when you start doing this in a state machine, you suddenly realize that, like, oh wait, you can't just like jump from not logged in to on the dashboard. There's the whole flow to actually get somebody through. And it makes, I think you put it in a way that stuck in my brain, which is it makes hidden complexity visible,
Mhm. Yeah.
in a way that that our standard programming models don't. Like, in a standard programming model, you would just make a Boolean or just kind of jump ahead, right? But so with state machines, what I found really interesting is that you do this work of diagramming. You're writing down all these pieces, all these steps, all these flows. You show somebody and they go, great, this makes sense, let's build it. And you go, I already did. And you just put that into your app, and now your state machine powers all the logic in your app. But so this isn't a new concept though, right? State machines have been around for a long time.
No. Yeah, so they've been around for, I mean, modern computers like wouldn't even be around without state machines. They're that fundamental, both at the hardware level and at the software level. And it's only been recently, like as of the last couple of decades, where we've really started to see state machines being used more and more in the UI. So
Mm.
before, they were used a lot in game logic, in embedded electronics, and things like that. So I think the real revolution nowadays is just using state machines for things that we would typically just code normally. And by code
Mm.
normally, I mean that we're already implicitly making these state machines. And so by using state machines, like you said, what I said, we're making that logic clear, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's why, like, a lot of people say, like, oh, this state machine, it seems a lot more complicated than if I were just to write a long series of async await statements. However,
Mm.
the state machine isn't introducing any complexity. It's just revealing that complexity and saying, hey, you might have missed something. I posted a tweet recently, by the way, where basically I was talking about async awaits. Like, I've seen it so
Right.
often where we would have a chain of await statements without any try catches. Or we would assume that it's just a linear process. You do this, then that, then that, and then, eventually you get some sort of end results. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that logic is not always that simple. And
Hmm.
so something that we're seeing more and more at Stately is that yes, the argument can be made, especially if you're doing CRUD apps in the front end, that, oh, my components or my logic is too simple to warrant a state machine. However, looking on the server side, all of a sudden you have a lot of complex business logic where essentially you do need a state machine. And I've even found, honestly, there's more use cases for state machines on the back end than there are on the
Oh,
front end. So
interesting.
that's what, yeah, that's one of the big realizations that we've made.
That's really fascinating. And so that's sort of what we're talking about today, right? Is
Hmm.
and because I'm just gonna say out loud what you said to me, because when you said it, my whole brain was like, what? But you were talking about building a state machine that runs at the edge, so in Netlify Edge functions, and we're going to power that with PlanetScale's new serverless database driver. So we're
Yes.
building a database edge state machine. And what did you had a name for it that I missed when you were giving me the original pitch here. You were saying like
Um,
what it is, like a workflow something.
yeah, yeah. I guess a serverless state machine powered workflow on the edge. I actually forgot what I called it, but
Well,
we could go with that.
whatever it is, I'm really really excited about this because it's just a use case I'd never really considered, right? And I know we
Mhm.
saw, was it Eric Rasmussen gave this really wonderful talk about like how your router can be a state machine, and how you can use like the actual URLs in your app as a state machine. And it was kind of put together this really fascinating talk. I should find that and share a link. But there's these really amazing ways that are they're unexpected to me, that state machines start to play in. It's really really fascinating. So I'm gonna, yeah,
Mhm.
let me open this up here. Don't make any noise. It's gonna try to make noise. Don't you do it. Okay, all right. So here's ah, damn it, just always making noise. Okay, so here's a link to Eric's talk if anybody wants to watch that. He gave that talk at RemixConf. It was great. It was a great talk. And we're going to be doing something that is sort of similar, but not the same at all. Like we're going to be sort of playing with the same idea of state machine somewhere that's not front end, which
Mhm.
I think until I had, like, obviously in retrospect, I'm like, oh, of course, state machines work everywhere. But I think until I saw that talk from Eric, it had never actually, like, the light bulb hadn't gone on, where I was like, oh yeah, state machines are super useful in all sorts of applications, not just like making sure that my drop downs are never in an impossible state of being both open and closed, or
Right.
whatever it is
Yeah.
that you can do if you've only got your Boolean
There's so
statements.
many more use cases than that. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit through just the abstract of what we're going to
Mhm.
try to build today. So we've got a state machine, we've got Netlify Edge functions, we've got a database. What do we want to accomplish by combining these tools?
Yeah. So basically, just a disclaimer, this is going to be very much proof of concept. Obviously, you would want to write more robust code than
Sure.
this, and it is also something that we're exploring at Stately as well. But the long story short is, let's say that you have some business logic that isn't just a straightforward async awaits. Like you actually have many steps. It could pause. You want to add human in the loop. You want to add
Mm,
branching to your logic, basically Zapier on steroids for your application, but in a visual way. So let's say you have this application logic, you want to represent it as a state machine just because, like you said, it's a flow chart. You could show it to your PM designer and be like, "This is the application logic that you told us and that we're
hmm.
representing faithfully in code." Um, so let's say that you have that in a state machine, and let's say that you want to run that on the edge. And so we're going to see like why it's actually really cool that it's running on the edge, rather than just another serverless function.
Right.
But at the same time, while this logic is running, and so this could be long-lived logic,
Hmm.
I actually want us to be able to visualize it in real time. So in order
Ooh.
to do that, and so I have a confession. When I first proposed, like, hey, I want to talk about state machines on the edge, I was playing around with Netlify Edge functions, and it was super easy to get started. But I wasn't even thinking about the whole like using the power of the edge. Basically, I used just a cookie flow. I stored the state in a cookie, and I made that work. And I'm like, okay, as long as I'm running a state machine on my machine and no one else's, it's going to work because it's within a cookie. But I'm like, you know what? We need something more global than that. And so that's why, I was super excited when I heard PlanetScale announce their serverless driver for JavaScript.
Right,
That I
right.
was like, what we could do is when the state machine transitions, we could persist that state to the database. And then when we rerun the serverless function, so when it gets a new event, we could read that state, transition it, and then save that new state. But at the same time, we could also just update the visualization somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so cool.
So that's how all the parts come together,
I love
basically.
it. I love it. I can't wait. Okay, so I feel like there's a lot that I could talk about in the abstract, but it's going to be way easier if we just look at it. So let me switch us over into code mode. So we'll head over to pair programming, and I'm going to pull over. We need one browser window here. Let's get this one over and make it the right size. There we go. And I'm going to just do a quick shout out to our live captioning. We've got Rachel here with us today. Thank you very much, Rachel, from White Coat Captioning. And that is made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, and New Relic. If you want to follow along with the live captioning, it is on the homepage of the site, like it is every episode. And we are talking today to David Khourshid, who is David K. Piano on the old Twitter. Make sure you go and give a follow. Okay, so where's the right place to start here? Where should we kick off?
So I would say the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to create a new Netlify Edge function.
Okay, great. Let's make a new directory. We're going to call this, we will call this state machine edge function workflow. Sure. And then we're going to go into it. I'm going to get init, and then we will netlify init.
I'm actually probably going to learn some stuff here too.
You know what? I'm going to actually hold off on that because we're not quite ready to, we'll like deploy to Git first. So we've got an empty folder here, and what I'm going to do is open this up in my VS Code. And so we've just got an empty folder, nothing in it. So I'm going to create Netlify edge functions, and what should we call this?
Workflow. Let's just call it workflow.
Workflow.ts, so that we've got ourselves an edge function here. And then the next thing that we need to do is we'll get a netlify.toml so that we can actually use this. Oh no, I need to look this up now. Is it edge function or edge functions? I always forget.
So it's plural. Funny enough.
Okay, yeah. It's plural. Great. Oh, right, because it's an array. So we are tommeling our way to victory here. And then we're going to choose a path. So our path for now can just be the root, and our function will be, gotta check my toml one more time here just to make sure I'm doing this right. Documentation, path function. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So then we do a function. That function is going to be workflow, no extension required. Okay. Now, whenever we run this, whenever we hit the root path, it's going to execute this workflow function. So we can start async function. I'm just going to double check this one more time to make sure that I am not missing any pieces. Export default. Yes. Okay. So we're going to export default function, and it's going to return a new response that says hello from the edge. Right? Okay. So that's our default function, and this should be about as bare minimum as we can get. So let's try to run it.
I love how easy it is, by the way. Like, I've only started playing with Netlify Edge functions recently, and it's just a breeze.
This is like one of the pieces that always makes me smile is that I remember, years ago trying to do this stuff where you'd see something cool and you're like, I want to try this. And then you'd have to spend a whole Saturday trying to get your development environment configured so it would run. And then you got to play. And I love that with new tools, we just get to like Okay, one file, I'm running. I love it. So here we go.
Yeah.
We've got our edge function running. Whenever you hit the home page, it's that, and this is all there is to it, right? We just have to put together the edge function itself, and then tell Netlify to run it, and we're off to the races here. What should we do next?
Yeah, so we've done a hello world with Netlify edge function. So let's do a very simple hello world with XState.
Okay.
And I've been living in Node world for so long, so I actually had to, figure out how to do things the Deno way.
Right.
But we're going to create a machine from XState, and so that's going to be imports create machine. Just pull that from the objects, and that's going to be from https://cdn.skypack.dev/xstate. Unless there's a better CDN. I don't know. I've just been using that one, and it seems to work.
This I don't think it really matters as long as it's an ES module.
Right, which this one should be.
Yeah.
All right. So now above our function, let's make a machine. And so I think you have the XState extension in this.
I do.
Okay, so delete line 3. There's something new that
I'm just going to show everybody.
Which I think is...
Where is it? Search. Where are you at? Okay, so this is the extension for anybody who is interested, and I will open it over here so I can share a link. This will give you XState power-ups in VS Code. Okay, so I'm going to delete line 3.
Instead, type XSM. I wonder if you get this snippet. There you go. Press enter.
Ooh, what?
And there you go. So now you have a machine right there. So
unbelievable. Okay.
And so this is going to add a machine with your TS types and everything and your schema. You don't really need all of that. Let's actually delete the context for now, just making this a little bit simpler.
No context.
Yeah. And so I actually want to make a traffic light, and we're going to see why like when we get to the end of the stream, but it's going to be really cool. Traffic light is like the hello world of state machines, I guess. We could do this manually. I know people have been complaining like, oh, I'm editing a big JSON object. So you should see that there's an open visual editor thing on the top left, right above create machine.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you click that, right now you do have to log in via GitHub.
Come on. You need consent.
I know, no, honestly, we are removing that pretty soon. So yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, that's not what I meant. I meant it's so freaking cool that this is just, look at it go.
Yeah. So,
oh my God, this is incredible.
Let's close those panels just because they're taking up a lot of real estate.
Close these ones.
Sorry about that. No, so in the, those two in the extension,
nice.
We have our little state machine. We have our initial state over there. So let's make a simple traffic light. To create a new state inside that traffic light box, if you double click within it, then you could just create like green, yellow, red, or I mean, you could change the name there too.
Oh, double click within it. Okay, got it. Green.
Yeah, so just type yellow, red.
Unbelievable. Look at it. And it's updating the code live.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could probably delete that initial state, and there we go. It's going to go to green. So now let's add some transitions. So I would say green, next go to yellow, then next go to red.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is so incredible.
And so, what you would do, you would just drag that white box over to, it's sort of weird.
Wait.
You might need to space things out a little bit.
Yeah, let's do a little spacing.
Yeah.
To yellow.
There we go.
To red.
Cool.
So good.
And of course, traffic lights go on forever. So let's make sure that we have an event from red back to green.
Got it. I'm going to do a lot more spacing here so we can see a little more easily. And then we'll take our red and we go back to green. And I want this one to live down here.
And there we go. We have our traffic light.
Unbelievable.
So this, obviously, this is a very contrived example, but we're going to be using this to power our serverless workflow. Like this is going to be technically our application logic. Now, if you wanted a more real life scenario, even though I think this is pretty fun, you could think of this as like an approval workflow. Like, let's say you send the documents out for approval and you're waiting for someone or some webhook to be called and send an event to it. Like, that's just one of the ways that I would use Netlify edge functions with XState to, power this kind of business logic.
Right.
But for now, this works. Yeah.
This is wonderful. Okay, so we have a working thing, and so I think okay, so how do we actually test this? I guess, like, what do we do with it?
All right. So let's that's a good question. What I want to do, we're probably just like putting everything together right now.
Mhm.
But I think the third step is sort of a hello world for PlanetScale.
Oh yeah. Okay. Great.
So yeah. Um let's do this. So let's go inside the edge function.
Okay. So we're inside. Should I shut this down?
Yeah, you
Okay.
yep.
So we'll close this down. We can always get it back by hitting that visual editor. Unbelievable.
Mhm.
And so now we have our basic setup here. We've got our events. We've got our states. Beautiful. I'm going to collapse that for now. And then because we're going to need to use environment variables, right? Because we're connecting to a database. We can't show that on stream.
Yeah.
Before we do this, I'm actually going to deploy this. So let me add everything. And we've got our workflow. We've got a type gen. And then we've got all these pieces here. I'm going to git commit and say work in progress, edge function plus state machine, POC. Great. And then I'm going to GitHub repo create, and I want to push the local repository up. Oops. If I can copy paste this here. We do want to use the local one. I'm going to use the full name so that it puts it under the right org. No description needed. We'll make it public. That's the GitHub CLI that we're using. We will add a remote. We want it to be called origin, and I want to push right now. Okay, so that all did what we want. And now if I click this button, the code is now up for anybody who wants to follow along. Look at all these friendly faces in the chat. I see Nikki, I see Shonday, I saw Chance a minute ago. What's up, everybody? Vinny, how you doing? Vinny, remembering when I used to accidentally share all of my secrets? I know. So let's go in and actually set this up. So I'm going to take us into the Netlify app. I'm going to create a new site, and we'll import an existing project from GitHub. Don't need the Netlify stuff because it's on the Learn with Jason account. So we'll go to Learn with Jason right here. And then we're going to search for state because that was the first word. And here it is. Okay, so now, not really anything we need to do. We can just deploy. And because there's only an edge function in here, this should deploy in just a few seconds, at which point I can start doing environment variables. So I'm going to use a feature that I've enabled in Netlify Labs. If you haven't enabled it, it is this one here, Scopes and Deploy Context for Environment Variables. And by enabling that, we get this extra tab here, which means that we can use this nice little environment variable setup. So I'm going to set this one up here, and we'll call this PlanetScale. What was it called? Database connection string or something?
Something like that. I was just using database underscore URL just because.
Oh yeah,
that's why I saw in the PlanetScale. Yeah, or
right, let's just do that. So we'll call it that, and then we have the ability to hide these now, so we can drop that out. And then I will go over to our super top secret spot where we had that before, copy paste it in. And if we wanted to, we could actually, let's do that. We're
you
gonna
hackers,
turn it off. We don't want it to be available
dirty
anywhere
hackers.
except in our function. So I'm going to turn it off in all of those scopes. And then if we wanted to as well, we could change this. I'm not going to click this because it might make it visible, but you could change it to be a different value when you're in local dev versus a deploy preview versus a branch versus your production URL. But we're going to use the same value for all of them because this is a proof of concept. But now we've got this PlanetScale DB URL. And when I come back here and I run Netlify link, and I'm just going to use, because I'm already here, the site ID because it's nice and fast. So I'm going to Netlify link, enter a site ID, paste that thing in there. And now we go. And when I run Netlify dev, here comes our database URL. You can see that it was loaded from Netlify. So now we don't have to manage that locally, no .env files or anything like that. And why did that happen?
Yeah, let's get rid of the context and the TS types just to make TypeScript happy.
Okay, so we go back. Don't need the context.
Yeah. And the TS types you could delete as well.
Okay. Delete that. And then, is it happy now? Removed edge function typed in. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it seems a little happier now.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's do some PlanetScale stuff. So the environment variable that Jason just copied in is for my database that I've already provisioned on PlanetScale. And that database actually already has some state machines in it, but I want to overwrite the first one. Again, this is very much like hackathon project level, but we're going to override the first one with an ID of 1 with Jason's state machine. And so to do that, what I'm thinking of doing is just like if the request.method is put, then let's overwrite it. So that's going to be basically our overwrite the machine from scratch command. So, and I would do that in the edge function.
Okay. So let's move that on down. Oh, too far.
Yeah,
never
quite
mind.
the journey.
Never mind. Let's go with the traditional copy paste. How about that? All right. Here's what we want to do. And then I need, let's see, I think I have it open so I can just copy paste the PlanetScale. Where were you? Over here. Here's my PlanetScale, and we can get the driver out of driver's code and documentation. Nope, that's not it. I want the example application. That's not the code. That's the example code. So we can see the PlanetScale database. This is what we want. So I'm going to come back over here, get database, and then we need to
create a connection.
And that's
connect.
Is that URL?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And then we go dino.env. I need to run a piece here to get this to stop yelling at me. And we called that
PlanetScale_db_URL, I believe. Yep. There we go.
All right. So now we've got a database. And I'm going to, just to get this recipes, VS Code, and this will just get these Dino errors to go away because it'll set up VS Code to have Dino bindings. And now it's mad
that's
about,
awesome.
Yeah, now it's bad. Now it's mad about things that are different. Oh wait, is this? Yeah. Those are errors we actually want. So
yeah,
got my database.
So
connection.
we have our database. Yeah. So pretend that and just saving a couple hours here. Pretend that I've already provisioned the database and with the schema and everything. And so this is reading from the workflows table, and we have a couple of columns, among others, but it's state and the machine. And so when we do a put, what I want to do is let's do a await db.execute.
Okay, so I'm assuming we need to check the request method. So we will. Yeah. So const data equals await db.execute, and then we can put any query in here.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the query we're going to do is we're going to update workflows, lowercase workflows, set state equals question mark, comma, machine equals question mark. And so it's just a plain question mark.
Right. We're doing
yeah, we're doing
called?
The PlanetScale.
These
I'm not sure, honestly.
Yeah, I can't remember. Back in my PHP days, I would know this.
Yeah, where ID equals question mark. So we're going to be interpolating three different things.
Okay. So then here.
All right. So this is actually a lot simpler than than it might seem. So the first thing we're going to put is the state, and so that's going to be JSON.stringify machine.initial state.
And it's the traffic light machine, right?
Yeah.
Initial state. Okay.
And then we're going to JSON.stringify the machine itself.
Okay.
Yep. And then it's going to be 1. So we're just going to be overwriting the first row.
Got it.
Which
Got it.
I think is fine.
All right. So we and then we need to check whether or not this is put, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I will if request, is it method equals put. Then we're going to do this bit, right? And then do we need to store this? Are we doing anything with this data?
No.
Okay, I'm just going to...
We need to do anything with that.
Give it the old skipperoonie. And then do we need to return anything? Like what's the response to a successful put? 200?
Yeah, I would just do 200.
Okay. Response, we can do like a okay and status of 200.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we send a put, we will override this state machine. Someone,
if all goes
Nikki
well.
called the question mark SQL inject me nots.
Yep. Actually, this was really fun because I haven't touched MySQL in ages.
For real?
PlanetScale really brought me back. So
it's like a little time capsule.
That was pretty great. Yeah.
Okay, so we have the ability now. If I run this again, we should be in a position to
make a put request.
And so
using whichever method you want, curl, postman, whatever.
What invalid URL? What you yelling about? Connection database URL. It doesn't like my... I wonder if I copy paste.
Oh, are you on local? So no, it's probably because you don't have an environment variable set up locally. Or sorry, you don't have that env file set up. I've ran into that.
So it's here.
Oh, okay.
But I'm wondering, maybe I copy pasted it wrong. I'm going to pull this off screen real quick and check that I didn't copy paste the wrong thing in. Scope to functions. Oh yeah, I screwed it up. Let me edit. And what I ended up doing was I actually copied like database URL equals instead of just the connection string. So that's my bad. All right, so let's try that again.
Fingers crossed.
And reload.
So
Hello
far.
from the edge. So no anger. So we're good from there, and then we can open up a new tab and is it X put?
I honestly just use Postman.
You know what? I'm wearing the Postman t-shirt today. I should probably just use Postman.
We are advertising so many companies today.
All right, so we got this one here. Let's do a put, and it has, I don't think it's got anything in it, so let's just send. And we get back an okay. And I don't know, I'm assuming it succeeded because it didn't yell. We didn't log anything to like get the result back or anything.
Right. Let me show you something real quick. I'm going to copy and paste a link into the chat.
Okay.
Just to prove that it worked, because I'm also doing something experimental on the XState Viz side, and I'm actually really excited because this does work. So disregard the URL. We're going to replace that with our own edge function, but this is just sort of I already have a cake in the oven. But again, we're going to replace that pretty soon.
Get back to here, open this up.
Yeah, so this is your traffic light, the one that you created with event 1, event 2, etc. And right now, it's not going to do anything. So we have to sort of connect it up because it's just showing the machine, which I mean, it is pretty cool on its own, but we want this to actually be sort of a functioning workflow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only a couple more parts we need to add in order to get that to work.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. So we have a put. Now what we need to do is post. And so this post is going to be for events.
Okay.
Yeah. So unless we change the machine, we don't need to really call that put again. But it's still useful to have there.
Yeah. Okay. So if we get a post.
Yeah. So the assumption is that we're going to be sending our event, which is going to have a type and a string and, potentially some other payload. But just for now, we're going to keep it simple and just give it a type. And so we're going to be pulling that from the body. And so
Okay.
I like just using await request.json to grab that data.
Yeah. Data equals await request.json.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
And then we can like console log that data just so that let's stringify it. That way we'll be able to see what comes in. And what do we want to do with that?
All right. So what we want to do, there's a couple of steps to do. The first step is we need to read what the current state is. And so that's going to be another SQL query. Okay. So we're just going to, this one we are going to want the results. So you could just call this results equals awaits db.execute. And so we're going to select star because I'm lazy. I know it's not best practice. Star from workflows where ID equals question mark. And actually you could hard code 1, but whatever, we'll do it the safe way.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll do it as a 1.
And it's just going to be 1. And I don't know if the semicolon is necessary. I just don't want things to blow up.
I don't think it is. I was thinking about it like my old SQL days are like, wait, you have to put that in because otherwise you'll get yourself in trouble.
Well, when you're actually when you're in the PlanetScale, the command, whatever it's called, I think you do need the semicolons, but for here I think it just adds it for you.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. All right. So assuming we get workflow data, this is going to return a result. And so that result is going to have rows. So, I mean, we should be smart and make sure that there's rows and stuff, but whatever, let's just be optimistic.
Yeah.
Just for time's sake. And so we're going to read the workflow data from like the first item in those rows. So rows 0.
Rows 0. Okay. So that's our...
we'll call it workflow data.
Workflow data.
Yeah.
Equals rows 0.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so now here's the fun part. We have to actually figure out the next state. And so the next state is going to be our traffic light machine dot transition.
Next state. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
Was traffic light machine dot transition.
Mm-hmm. And so the first is going to be, this is a bit of a verbose API, but that's because we're reading in a raw result, and we have to make it to something that the machine actually understands. So the first argument is traffic light machine dot resolve state.
Okay.
And then we pass in the workflow data dot state. So this is the JSON representation of the current state.
Okay.
And then for the second argument, that's just the data that we already have. Nothing to do there, just pass in data. Or sorry, that's the data. So the event data.
Oh, the event data. I got you.
Yeah. So this is going to be our next state. And we could console log or whatever else you want here. But once we have that next state, we're going to do another SQL statement where we're going to actually update our that row with the updated state.
Okay. So we will await db execute, and we were going to update uh, is it just workflow or
Workflows. Yeah.
update workflows?
And we're
Set
going to set, yep, states where, I think, yeah, that's all we need to do. ID equals, yeah.
Okay, and then we're going to get one of these, and we'll JSON stringify, and that is next state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we just send in that one. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's our updated data. And do we even need this?
No, we don't.
Okay. So now, and Tony was asking, how did Stately pick up our machine? The reason it was able to pick up the machine is that what we're doing is writing to a database, and we're actually putting the machine into the database. And then David's URL here, where was it? Here,
yeah,
is reading from that same database. So basically, we put a stringified state machine into a database that is now being read somewhere else, which is really dang cool. I think that is really fun.
Yeah.
So now we've got the ability to actually post a new state, and it will cause us to move to the next state. Which should we just give that a shot?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and give it a try.
Okay, so now we can post.
Do we have a response, by the way?
Oh, not yet. No, we don't. Let's do that. So we can return new response. Whoops.
Yeah. I would say the one thing that actually did get me, and I don't know if this is local or if it's going to happen in Netlify, like when we deploy it via Netlify, but I did need to put like an access control allow origin header just so it didn't give me any
yes,
things.
that is true. Because we don't want to, by default, you do want the core stuff. So access control allow origin, and we need to set that to, we'll set it to star so that anybody can try this if they want. But in a production application, we absolutely would not set that to star. Right. Because that would allow anybody anywhere to just send a post to our database and break it. But now we should get back our updated. That should be good. And right, I think we're happy. Do I need to include that here as well for like any pre-flights?
I'm not sure.
Probably, right?
Maybe.
I'm gonna do it just in case, because I don't want to get yelled at by cores. So we'll let anybody can send a request from anywhere, and that way like an options request should get the cores pre-flight. But now we have raw, we can set it to JSON, and I want to send an event. So my event is going to be is it like a type?
Yes, type and then whatever event name you gave. So if you want to change the event names, like right now it's just capital event space 1. We could change that to timer or next or something like that if you want to. I mean,
I think that's a good idea, so that they're like sensical. So I could say we want to do
like next.
Is it always, can it always be next?
Yeah, why not?
So that way we just send an event of next and it loops around.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
Makes things easier from the Postman side.
Absolutely. And then if we open our visualizer, here it is. We can see that.
Yeah, arrows are a bit funky. I'm working on that.
But now we go next, and then we get to next, and then we get to next, right? And they all just kind of move, which is great. So then I need to, in order to make this work, I'm gonna close this up.
Put request.
And then I'm going to send that put request. So we'll put, body's going to get ignored anyways. So we did that. Yeah. And now if I go back to this visualizer here and reload, we should see the update next, and we can, click the buttons to get to the states. Bada bing, bada boom, right? That's very cool. And so then if I want to go in here and send an event of type next, do I need to send a payload of any sort?
I don't think you do. No.
Okay.
Shouldn't need to.
Let's just send it and see what happens. So I'm going to refresh the page here and make sure that we know where we are. We should be in green. Oh no, I
Yeah.
broke it.
Oh, sorry. So I was playing around with this on my thing and it overrode that machine. If you could
Oh,
do another
great.
put
Let me do a put.
request,
I will put.
then yeah, that's my bad.
Okay, so here's a put. Here's our state. We're in green. I'm going to post, send, reload. Oh, it auto did it. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So what's
didn't
happening
realize it was
behind the
real
scenes
time.
here? Yeah, no, I meant real time. So what's happening here, it's a bit naive, but we're just doing polling. And so we're reading the database and we're seeing like, okay, what is the current state? And so this will actually probably work both ways. Um, Actually, no. So before that, we do want to actually deploy our Netlify edge function. So we could grab that URL.
Great. Isn't this is chat? Are you having fun? This is freaking cool.
Oh, but before we do that, there's one more missing piece, and actually, this is the easiest one.
Okay.
So we, of course, need a way to read our state. So we need a get
Yes,
handler.
and so that'll be kind of our default here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this is just going to be a simple, await db.execute, just select star from workflows where ID equals whatever. And then we just dump that into a JSON, like the first results from that row. And we just return that response.
db.execute, we're going to send select all from workflows where ID equals 1. And then I'm going to...
I would call that results because that's going to be a, we're going to give results dot rows 0. So we're going to give the first item in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think if we just JSON stringify result dot rows 0, we should be good to go.
Okay.
So now this is useful as well because we could go into Postman, make a GET request, and just query what is the current state of our workflow.
I think we'll actually even be able to see it right here on the home page. There it is. So wow. when you just hit this, because we set it to be the root, it'll just dump the current state. But you could make this a sub route, like make it /API/get current state or something like that. But now that we know that works, we can git add everything and say git commit and say, state machine CRUD for DB set up. Okay, let's push that. And now, where's my... Oh, I pulled it off screen because I was going to look at values. So I'm going to instead come back over here. Got stuck. Here we go. And that is building now. Here they're doing work on my house today. And so there's like drills and stuff in the background. Okay, so this should be live in just a second. There it goes. And we can now open this up. And ta-da! Awesome. There's a state machine.
All right. So now the big ugly URL I gave you for the visualizer. Yeah. So at the ends there's a query param that has URL. And so right now that's pointing to my preview deployment. So let's just switch over to yours.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're still in business. All right. Can you do me a favor and copy paste that big URL over to me?
Yep.
All right. Really hope this works. Okay, so here's the thing. You have the traffic light on your screen. I have it on my screen. And this is where, just deploying functions to the edge really comes in handy because right now I'm going to click next. I really hope this works. So if I click next, it will transition.
Go. No hands, everybody.
Exactly. So now you could click next. It's going to show up on my thing. So we're using PlanetScale Netlify edge functions in order to just have a workflow that just works in a serverless way.
That's so good. This is so good. And I'm honestly surprised that this is not just spinning really fast because I actually gave the chat the URL and not a single person has set. Oh, there it goes.
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
it's so good. It's so good. I mean, this is freaking cool though, because if you think about, well, like, a traffic light is obviously a very hello world, as you mentioned. But what we just did here is we're doing things like, imagine you've got a collaborative app where you need to be able to put things into like locked or unlocked states because only one person can edit a text field at a time. Or you want to do something where people are looking at a screen and you want to update, like, hey, this talk is live now, or you want everybody to get live poll results and things. Each of those things has a little state machine attached to it where you want to
Yeah.
be in, like, have you responded, or are you viewing results? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And so you get this combination of like local UI state, I've clicked buttons or not, and the state that's kind of shared among everybody using the app that can go live in the edge with the database. Holy crap. Like, your whole, and this actually gets back to a question that somebody asked earlier. I think I can't remember who asked it, so I apologize. But somebody said, do state machines remove your need to write tests? And I think the answer is obviously no. But does it reduce the
Right.
burden of writing tests?
I would say so. And so the reason is because state machines remove a lot of defensive code. And I'll just talk really quickly about why you need to use defensive code if you're not using state machines.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, when you have something like this kind of workflow, whether you're using like complex logic on the front end or back end, anything can happen at any time. For example, you might have a submit button. The user can press that submit button at any time, and you might forget to disable it or something. So,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Now you have to write an if statement to be like, hey, if the form is submitting, like if we have some is submitting flag, then make sure that clicking that submit button won't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
However, this is an innate property of state machines where it's like we're defining, instead of it being defensive logic, we're just saying, hey, this button doing the submit event is not going to do anything if it's not in this state. So we don't really need an if statement in that case. And so a lot of the time when we're writing these unit tests, we are testing that defensive logic because it gets really complicated and it all lives in our head.
Mm-hmm.
So state machines provide that level of safety, and they actually allow you to think about tests more at the user level, the end user level, where it's like, does this actually match the business logic that I intend? And so
Mm-hmm.
when you get to that level, tests become a lot more valuable because you
Absolutely.
don't have to, you don't have to worry about your implementation details.
I think that maybe to me is the potentially the crux of why I think a lot of folks push back against tests is, depending on how you've written your code, a lot of time you're testing whether or not your code was implemented well, not whether your application is doing what you want it to do. And what we should be trying to test is the outcomes. You're trying to test that the user can accomplish this thing, and instead we're like, like you said, you're writing defensive code, then you got to test that your defensive code works. So you're trying to hammer all these things. Whereas with a state machine, you've explicitly defined it is impossible for your app to get from one state to another without sending this specific event. And so now you don't have to, you can't double click the submit button because there's no way after you've sent the submit event to send it again. The state machine doesn't allow that.
Right.
Those types of things, I don't know if this has happened to y'all, but I've definitely been guilty of the like payment form that I didn't realize was doing anything. So I clicked the button again and then I double paid, right? Like, it happens less and less these days, but that
Right.
used to be a real problem, even like 5 years ago.
Even today,
It's
promise
still
you.
possible
Still happens
today.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this removes that. And it's not by like remembering to write a really, really clean component. It's by saying, no, the application logic literally can't do that.
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect example, I think, because again, even today we see messages that say submitting payment or submitting form, please do not refresh your browser window. And so the
Mm-hmm.
reason that that's happening is because yes, the logic does live on the server side, at least partially. The browser is making an API request, but on the server side, the implicit state machine that they have, whenever that payment request is made or that that form is submitted, it's going to run some logic and it's not going to check, didn't they just make a submission already.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have something like this, and this is why I say that state machines are actually very common in backend logic. Like you could represent most of backend logic with workflows and these flowcharts and ultimately state machines. You prevent that need to be like, hey, please don't submit this twice, because you
Mm-hmm.
can have logic like this to make sure that you are following the proper state transitions and you're not going to double charge the user or
Right.
something like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you can see like so many use cases for this. I'm thinking about in a CMS, I might
Mhm.
have, maybe I'm an author and I can write posts, and the editor would need to be able to review and mark whether that is, approved for deployment or actually deployed, or, it's published or it's in draft, and all these sorts of things where like there are different things I can do. If something is published, I shouldn't be able to just like wildly make an edit as an author, right? Because then that would give me the ability to, as a contractor, go in and make a big mess of somebody's content on their website with no oversight. So when it's in draft state, I can do whatever I want. When it's in published state, it needs to do something different. If you're an editor, you need different permissions. Each of those things can go through the state machine with the right guards in place to make sure that like if you have this, this role, then you can pass through this event. And if otherwise, it'll bounce back to an error state that says like, hey, you don't have permissions. And these are the sorts of things that like we always end up building this stuff, right? But if you're not building it in a way that is very clearly visualized, every single system I've ever built that didn't have a state machine leads to us getting 90% of the way through development and then realizing, crap, we forgot an edge case. And then you got to go rip out some logic and build in some more stuff. And you always kind of find yourself in these very complex situations. And this is how tech debt is born, right? You find that edge case and you go, well, I don't want to rebuild this whole system. So you just build a loop. Well, here's some conditional logic. We'll go out here and then we'll come back. And then now this is a decoupled system that sits on top of your original system that sits on top of a different system. And now you're just like, oh man, this is never going to be debuggable.
Right, right. I completely agree. And oh, by the way, I realized that it might look like there are some invalid transitions being made over here, but that's probably because a lot of people are sending events at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. And we're
I
polling,
think.
right?
Yeah, so we're polling. And so that's why this is something that, we want to experiment more in the future with Stately, like maybe running a WebSocket server, which I don't believe can be done using Netlify edge functions, but um, like this is honestly just an experiment project that I want to take a lot further. We've been thinking about the server side use case for XState a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And so another thing I was excited about, I think earlier this year, is when Netlify announced cron jobs. And so one of the reasons that people like using XState is because it makes side effects declarative too. And a very popular side effect is timers. People want to say after 1 second, after 2 seconds, do this. But with this, now you can say after a week or after a day or every
Mm.
single day. Like you could actually make use of, I guess what would you call it? Like a serverless cron,
Like
service or
a
whatever.
schedule.
Yeah.
We call them scheduled functions.
Okay. Okay. So a scheduled function, and all of that could just remain serverless.
Mm-hmm.
So you're moving a lot of what you would have to be doing in a long-lived app over to serverless. And so basically, this proof of concept is to show you that you could do the same with workflows. And this is a traffic light. This is long running. I mean, this. Imagine that this is a real life traffic light that's going to live until it's decommissioned. So this could last for years.
Mm-hmm.
So your first thought might not be like, hey, this traffic light's going to live in a serverless function, which by definition is very short lived. But because we're persisting the state somewhere, we could have basically long lived logic running in a serverless function. So that's what's
Mm-hmm.
exciting to me about all
Yeah,
of this.
there's some really, really incredible stuff here when you start thinking about like job queuing and some of those
Mm,
things where, the event that's getting sent is putting something in the database, and then there's, just a job queue running that looks to see like, oh, there's nothing in the queue, I'm not going to do anything. But then it notices like, oh, that something got put into my queue. I can now like tee that up and say, oh yeah, this happens at this time. So you can even do things like the polling here that's in place if it was running on a server where it just has a little loop that runs every 10 seconds or something. can just pick out a job and say, oh, I have to run a job now. And that job is to change it to yellow. And that, like there's so many cool things that we could do without actually having to run the server 24 hours a day. You can, you can still do it in like these little polling loops.
Yeah, and so you can imagine that each of these functions, like green, yellow, and red, and we won't do it on the stream today because it'll take too long. But like you could imagine that each of these is an async request. So it might be fetching data from an API, doing some sort of operation, waiting for doing that human in the loop pattern, and waiting for a webhook event to be received. And so you could basically model a sequence of tasks using this. So it doesn't just need to be states and events. Could be anything really.
Yeah, some really, really cool opportunities here. And kind of thinking about it too from a UI standpoint, right? Like if we've got something like this running in the background, then our UI can update a global state by just posting to our state machine, as opposed to, writing directly to the database or, stuff like that. That would be really... Yeah, you talked about this earlier about how many applications there are for state machines in backend logic, and now I'm thinking about like form or contact submission handling, and just how many little bonus things we could do if instead of saying, okay, update the database with this contact submission, I'm instead saying, okay, hit the state machine and say submit form, and here are the fields, and we can have the guards and conditions, and it's got a valid, like, hey, you're missing data state, and a valid, hey, the database write failed, you need to hit submit again state, and like all those pieces that you'll eventually write when you hit that edge case and somebody like files a ticket for it. But until then, you're like, no, we'll just hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah. And that's actually a cool idea, just representing multi-step forms as these backend workflows.
So. And they're resumable. Right. So because if I'm putting like I'm imagining now. So, OK, we've got a multi-step form. When I submit it, we're going to create a unique ID for this form submission anyways. So form submission ID goes in, the ID comes back, and my URL gets updated. I walk away, I come back, the state remembers where it is, and the data is already in the database. So I just hit that URL of like continue form submission 1, 2, 3. It pulls back wherever I was. I was on step 2 of 5 in my form, and it just puts me there. I get to then continue my form. I don't have to do this thing where a 15-step form that I really don't have an hour to fill out, I have to do it in one shot or else it times out, right? Like I can actually do a little bit of work at a time and make my way through. I love that. You got my gears turning here.
Yeah, no, there's so many ideas for this. Someone mentioned kind of like temporal on the edge. And so if you don't know what temporal is, people in the chat, temporal is a really cool, I was about to say serverless. It is not serverless. It's sort of the opposite. It's like many server, Kubernetes and all of that. But it's this technology for, it's basically a workflow engine in the cloud. And it's used for just really robust workflows. And so the philosophy of temporal, like how it works, is a little bit different than what we showed here. So with temporal, what it's going to do in order to have that resumable state is it's basically going to replay everything that has happened, sort of like event sourcing in a way. I don't think they call it that directly, but it is similar to that. And so they replay everything. They make sure like, oh, this is calling a side effect, but we already called that side effect, so we're not going to call it again. We're just going to continue through the function and then eventually end up at, whatever the function outputs. So the difference between this and XState is XState, we're literally taking a snapshot of the state. And because we're writing it as a state machine, we can do that. So we don't need to do a lot of replaying. Not saying that that's like an advantage or disadvantage, but it's just a different technique. All we have to do is say like, hey, here is the snapshot of the states that, we just had. And so you could resume it at any time. I think temporal is really cool. And in one of their latest office hours, there was actually an insane demo of a company that used XState and temporal together, and they had their own custom visualizer, and it was 3D. It was super cool. And they were also able to basically read the server state in real time, sort of do the same techniques that we're doing that we did today, except with different technologies, of course, and basically map out simulated user flows in real time in this 3D visualizer. So just imagine if XState Viz was in 3D.
Cool.
It was super cool. So I really recommend people check that out.
That is very, very cool. But so yeah, so we just to recap here for anybody who joined late, I just saw that that Trust and Friends rated. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. We've been playing with state machines on edge functions today. So what we're looking at here is a state machine that we built. And state machines, for those who aren't familiar, are a really old computer science, like a foundational computer science concept of mapping complexity in code. It's logical mapping, basically. So you've got states, you've got events, and things can only move through your program by moving between these states in the allowed fashion. So what we did was we used the XState state machine library and built a machine here that's a traffic light. So green, yellow, red, and they move together with the next action. But we use the XState VS Code extension so that we get this visual editor, which is legitimately, this is blowing my mind. Like this is so cool. Where we have now a visual editor for our state machines where we can see very quickly what's going on and how things work. It's updating our code for us as we go. And that gave us a state machine. So then I can come back in here and I can look, and we've got database connection. So we're using PlanetScale. We are allowing to set up our machine by just updating it. So if you send a put, it resets with the default state of the machine, which is this here. If you send a post, we are able to send an event, which right now you send the type of next, because we set next as the event that moves between all of them. And that updates to where the state is. And then if you hit it with a get, it shows the actual state, which means that out here, if people in the chat, I think, are still sending post requests. So me with no hands, we're seeing the events move through. So people are sending post requests. It's causing the light to change, and we're able to see what the state is in the app in near real time. We're polling here, but you could set this up with a stream or something like that as well if you wanted to. Yeah. And we did all of that we probably spent more time talking than coding. This was really fast to put together.
Yeah. I was really surprised how quickly this all came together. Yeah. Just to mention, so this is not part of the XState visualizer yet. Again, this is very hackathon experimental, but we do hope to have this be a real thing one day.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I find really, really cool is that, this piece being real time is wonderful, but we don't even necessarily need that piece because we're getting the state itself here, which allows us to we can just copy paste this right into the visualizer, which I guess we can just try, right? If I go to, is it just stately.ai or where's your visualizer now? Visualizer.
So yeah, there we go.
And then if I go to this machine and I drop this in and I visualize, oh, what did I miss?
Everything.
What? What did I don't know what I copy pasted. Weird. All right, let's try this again. There we go. Good. Let's visualize. What are you mad at? Oh, I double create machined. I made a whole mess of that. Really, really having issues today. There we go. So here is our state machine copy pasted from Logic. And everything that we're doing here is being visualized in real time. So I can go to my team and say, all right, when somebody comes to this screen, they can take one of these two actions. When they do that, they end up here, which gives them new actions. Did we miss any steps in this flow? And this is, you can discuss this with anybody. You don't have to be a developer. You don't have to get out a whiteboard. You don't have to find another medium of communication. And this is code. This is the actual source of truth. This is what happens when you run the application. And that, I think, is the major benefit. This is the selling point to me, is the fact that it's not like, we all know docs are important. We all know that visualizations are important, but they drift as soon as anything. We fix one bug and now it's slightly out of sync. And if somebody doesn't have time, they don't go back, they update it, or they update it slightly differently than the actual code was updated, or all these things. And almost immediately, any non-code artifact goes out of date in a sufficiently complex system. Exactly. But if your code is the visualization, it cannot go out of date. It will always represent itself because it is it is like building from its own logic.
Right.
Mm,
That's exactly
freaking
right.
cool.
Yeah. So long term at Stately, what we really want to do is have the visual editor able to be like, if you want to create a state machine, you should be able to just press deploy, and that could
Hmm.
deploy to any target that you want, especially now that I've seen how easy it is to use Netlify edge functions, like that being a first class citizen just seems really, really promising. But a lot of the time, like we as developers, we create these server side workflows either just in the code, we're sort of creating our own hacky versions of state machines in order to run these,
Mm,
whether it's like long chains of async awaits or even more over engineering.
hmm.
Um, but instead, developers might use some third party service like Zapier for simple things.
Right.
There's other ones like N8N, Pipedream. There's like a whole ton of services for, just having these workflows. But the problem is now you're stuck using those services and you're beholden to them. It's like you don't really own the code. So
Mm.
I think our philosophy is that if you create a state machine for your business logic, you should be able to run it however you want. In this case, on Netlify edge functions. And so that's our philosophy as well. And we really want to make that happen in the
Yeah,
easiest way possible.
and I think the part that I find really encouraging about this is, we're not introducing a new spec here. Like state machines are the state machine that we're looking at on Stately AI is the same state machine that we would have seen in a paper from the 70s on how
Yeah.
state machines function, right? And so that's the piece that's really
Mhm.
cool is this is a style of building that's durable, not just like cross framework, but like cross language, cross platform. Like this is it's a kind of an enduring computer science concept out, which means that you're not only not locked into like a tool, you're not locked into a language. You could port this from, there are state machine libraries in just about all of the programming languages, I think. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you have to clean up some syntax because this is JavaScript syntax, but like the logic
Yeah.
here is
True.
the same. You
Yeah.
pull in the state machine. It's going to work in Go. It's going to work in Rust. It's going to work in PHP.
Yeah. Or, worst case scenario, you could take this JSON object and you could literally just generate the code, whether
Mm,
it's a switch statement or an object or whatever I guess the idiomatic way of creating state machines in your language of choice uses.
mm.
And again, you're going to be able to find examples of that in any language just because it is a fundamental pattern. It's just not one that we talk about too much as developers.
Yeah.
Unless you talk to me, then I talk about it way too much.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So we've got a couple questions in here. Is the connect function from PlanetScale what's facilitating the real-time connection? I believe the answer is no.
No, yeah. So we're doing polling, and I actually briefly looked like if you could do some sort of subscription with PlanetScale. I don't think it's possible right now. It would be really cool for them to offer. I could be wrong. Like maybe I didn't read the docs deep enough, but right now we're just doing polling.
And then another question here is XState recommended to be used with simple state like UI changes? I think yes. That's where I started with it. That's where I really felt the power.
Yeah, yeah. And so to be fair, a lot of people might say, like, hey, I just have a very simple toggle component. I only need one Boolean to power. Do I really need all of XState for that? And so I would say no, at least not right now, just because you want to basically use the right tool for the job. And so
Mm,
think of XState as a car. If you're walking over to your neighbor's house, do you really need a car? Not really. But if you need to make a long distance journey, then yeah, you would really, really need a car for that. And so, with that said, in XState version 5, state machines are going to be only one. And well, it's going to be the main way that you define this logical behavior, but it's going to be one of many ways. So, if your
mm.
logic can be easily described in an async function or a reducer, then we have some exciting things down the pike for XState version 5. So actors are going to be like the main unit in XState version 5. So
Okay.
basically all of these different sources of state are just going to be able to communicate with each other in this events driven way. And we're going to be generating a lot more visuals like sequence diagrams and activity diagrams and things like that. Of course, you're going to get the most visual benefit from using state machines, but it's not going to be like a requirement. Like, we're not going to force everyone to write everything in state machines. It's going
Hmm.
to be like a gradual adoption strategy.
And that's
Um,
great, because
yeah.
I think a lot of times what'll happen is you'll look at something and say, "Oh, it's just a checkbox," and you'll say, "Well, I don't need a state machine for that." But then it's like, okay, but it's a checkbox that affects some form of the UI, and then the UI needs to be checking on the state of that checkbox, and then
Yeah.
something else depends on that, and it's like this gradual creep. But all of a sudden, you're like, "Whoa, okay, that felt really simple, but there are 4 or 5 interdependencies here." And we
Mhm.
have to write defensive code to catch all of those, potential states. Like, we can't show this UI if this checkbox is unchecked, and also they're not logged in, right? And right there, that's enough logic that you're kind of like, oh well, maybe a state machine's worth it now. So
Exactly.
it
And
happens
also,
fast.
yeah, and I would say the value is, largely in the visualization aspect. Like, the fact
Hmm.
that you could document your state machine as a visual diagram, or we're coming out soon with just a way to export your states and events in a markdown file. So you could
Oh,
just show it and explain to people, hey, this is what you could do in the app. Here's all the events outlined, all of the states, etc.
well, and the fact
Yeah,
that this is, fully visual, in the sense that, if I want a new state, I just double click in here, and we're like, okay, we're inventing a new traffic light, and now it's purple, and we want to, okay, well, maybe this one goes to here instead, right?
exactly. So you could just drag and
Boom, boom,
change it
and
around.
we have now completely changed the logic of our thing, and you can see exactly what happens. It goes red to purple and then to green, right? So I can save this, and then we come out here and we do a put, and we come back to our visualizer. And this is going to update in just a second here once it pulls, assuming my connection was refused. Oh, it was refused because I stopped the local server. So let me pull up the actual
Mm.
app. We'll
Yeah.
send it there,
While you do that,
and it's
I
okay.
saw a comment. The comment said 99% usage of state machines is resulting in over engineering. Convince me I'm wrong. I have heard this a million times, and so honestly, it's not whether you're using state machines or not. You're programming. Computers are state machines. Programming languages are basically state machines. If you're using regex, that's directly a state machine, just in a different form. So you're always using state machines at some implicit level. So it's not whether you're using state machines or not, it's whether you want to make your state machines implicit or explicit. And so this is just an explicit way of making these state machines. So and I would say, especially in so much code that I've seen, when you decide, like, I'm just going to write this code the way that I normally write it, like a string of async await statements with lots of defensive code in there, you are going to miss something. You are going to have some race condition. And so when you have a race condition, or when you have some missing logic, that results in bugs. And that's because of under engineering. So state
Mm,
machines, whether you use a library, and I'm not saying you have to use XState for everything, but just at least think of things in terms of what are the possible states and events that my app or logic can be in. That is literally exactly the right level of engineering. Now, is it possible to get too crazy and make too many states or transitions, or just overly abstract? Like, with any tool, you could use it too much, right?
mm-hmm.
So that would be over engineering. But I would say that not thinking about your application logic, and we're not even talking about state machines, but not thinking about your application logic in a modeled way where you could understand everything that's happening, is under engineering. So at the point where you could explain everything that your app could do, that's the exact right amount of engineering, whether you're using a state machine library or not.
Right, right. Um, this is great. I got some love for the keyframers, for your use effect talk. Really, I really enjoyed that. Are y'all still doing the keyframers?
We took a break, just because of life, and
Sure,
I have a
sure.
startup where I'm working 30 hours a day.
I imagine
So
that's That's too many hours, David.
Yeah, in invalid state. But we do want to start it back up again. So that might
Keyframers
be
is
happening soon.
super fun. For y'all who haven't heard of it, it is definitely worth going and checking out the backlog. It was David and Stephen doing some just really, really fun, like collaborative coding, a lot of music visualization, like just cool stuff. So definitely go and check that out. And I think that brings us to a good stopping point. Like this was awesome. I always feel like I walk away from these really inspired because you just start to see the way that dots connect and how much of this stuff is, it all comes down when you say that code is communication. There are easy ways and hard ways to communicate about code. And I feel like this is what we've been talking about the whole episode. And one of the things that I find really inspiring about using a state machine is that it cuts out these manual steps to communicate about your code because it's easily visualizable, because it's something that you can serialize and port to another language. It suddenly becomes something where writing this code once becomes a communication tool. I have thought through my logic. I visualized my logic. I can talk through it with all of the stakeholders, whether or not they can read code. And we can get to a point where we all agree. And then I can move forward with confidence that the things that the app can do are actually described well. So that to me is, it definitely gets me really excited to go out. Makes me wish I had more time to write code. But with that, let me do a little shout out. If you want more wonderful content like this, go head out and give David a follow. This episode, like every episode, has been live captioned. Thank you to Rachel from Whitecoat Captioning for being here today. And that's made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, New Relic, all kicking in to make the show more accessible to more people. And we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. So make sure you go and check the schedule. You can add it on Google Calendar. You can follow me here on Twitch. You can go over to the YouTube and subscribe there. But we've got Alex coming on next week. And then we've got a few other episodes that haven't made it up on the site yet. We are going to play with all sorts of really, really fun things. So please make sure you stay tuned. We're going to go find somebody to raid. David, any final words before we wrap this one up?
None from me. If you're interested in updates from Stately, we also have a Twitter, Stately AI, and we might be launching something at the end of September, so about a month from now. So keep your eyes out for that.
Always fun. All right, y'all. That's it for us today. Thank you. We will see you next time.